The hallway smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. A television played captions with the sound off. My socked foot kept sliding on the paper sheet. At the time, I thought it was a misunderstanding. Later, I learned it was a paper trail. A nurse clipped a chart to my bed rail and I watched her pen hover. The wall clock read 1:42 a.m. The doctor shut the door and turned the lock. He tapped the emergency contact line and said, "Stay right here." On the folder tab, one label stared back, 11:58 p.m. If I walked out, I could lose control of consent. Say it again. On record. I had driven myself to the hospital because I did not want to wake anyone. My hands shook on the steering wheel at every red light. The pain came in a tight band under my ribs, then loosened, then tightened again. I kept telling myself it was stress, that dental assistants learn to breathe through worse things. At intake, I smoothed the same stack of forms 3 times. The paper felt warm from the printer. I wrote my name carefully, then checked the spelling like it might drift. When I handed the clipboard back, the intake clerk asked for my husband's number, not my own. I corrected her. Softly. He arrived 20 minutes later, already irritated, coat still on. He stood instead of sitting, arms crossed, eyes on his phone. When I said the pain was getting sharper, he laughed once and said, "I always spiral." He told the clerk, "I overreact when I am tired." The nurse rolled the chair back and asked me to rate the pain. I said 7, then apologized for saying 7. The nurse did not smile. She tucked the clipboard under her arm and wheeled me through the doors. I watched my husband stop at the threshold. He leaned in, low voice, and told me not to make a scene. Then he said he would grab food and left. The doors closed behind him with a soft seal. A few minutes later, the doctor came in. He did not rush. He washed his hands, dried them, and looked at the chart without speaking. I kept smoothing the edge of the paper sheet, over and over, until he noticed. "Did you sign this?" he asked, tapping one line with his finger. I leaned forward and squinted. The name was mine. The initials were not. He checked the time on the wall, then on the form. He stood, closed the door, and turned the lock. The sound was small but final. "Stay right here," he said. I nodded, even though my throat had gone dry. I watched him slide the chart face down onto the counter, like he did not want anyone else to see it yet. My phone buzzed once in my bag, then stopped. I realized I was holding my breath when he said my name again. The nurse came back with a small plastic cup. I took 2 sips of water and set it down with shaking fingers. The doctor stood by the counter, one hand flat on my chart, like he was keeping it from moving. The folder tab said 11:58 at night. He pulled the curtain back and called for the charge nurse. Her shoes squeaked in, fast and sharp. She looked at me once, then at the form, then at the doctor's face. "Someone edited your emergency contact," the doctor said. I swallowed. My husband was here. The charge nurse picked up the clipboard and flipped it over. She ran her thumb along the paper edge, slow, like she could feel the lie in the fibers. Then she slid it into a clear sleeve and sealed it with a strip that made a quiet tearing sound. My phone buzzed again inside my bag. I did not reach for it. I was scared that touching it would make this real. The doctor opened the door just enough to speak into the hallway. He asked for the patient advocate. He asked for security. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. A few minutes later, they moved me into the waiting area outside the exam rooms. The chairs were bolted to the floor. A toddler kicked the leg of a coffee table, over and over. Someone's fast food bag crinkled with every breath. The patient advocate introduced herself and clipped a badge onto her cardigan. She pulled a pen from behind her ear and set a clean sheet of paper on her lap. Then she asked me to say, out loud, who I wanted as my emergency contact. I said my own number first. Then I said my sister's name. My voice sounded smaller than it should have. My husband arrived like he owned the air. He walked straight to the counter, phone in his hand, and leaned close to the intake clerk. He did not look at me until I said his name. When he turned, his expression was tired, like I had interrupted him on purpose. He did not ask if I was okay. He pointed at the chair beside me and did not sit. He just stood there and sighed. "See?" he said to the room. Not to me. "This is what I mean." The charge nurse stepped forward. The security officer stayed near the wall, one hand resting on his belt radio, eyes steady. The patient advocate held her pen above the paper, waiting. My husband smiled like he was calming a child. Then he said it, loud enough for the chairs to hear. She panics and exaggerates. This is just anxiety. A woman in a denim jacket stopped chewing. The intake clerk froze with her hand on the keyboard. The toddler went quiet for one long second. I felt my face burn. I could not tell if it was shame or the pain. I stood up anyway. My legs wobbled, but I stood. I looked at him and said, "Repeat that." Slowly. "Repeat that." Slowly. He blinked, offended, like I had spoken out of turn. Then he laughed again, softer, and tried to pivot. "Babe, you know what I mean. You get worked up. You always do." The patient advocate lifted her pen. "Sir," she said, calm and flat, "we need to document exactly what you said." My husband's eyes flicked to her badge, then to the security officer, then back to me. He lowered his voice. "You are embarrassing yourself." The charge nurse slid the clear sleeve onto the counter so he could see it. "This is not about embarrassment," she said. "This is about consent." My husband's jaw tightened. "I am her husband." The patient advocate didn't look up from her paper. "That does not give you automatic authority," she said. "Not here." He turned to the intake clerk. "Pull up the record. I'm listed." The clerk hesitated, then looked at the security officer like she wanted permission to breathe. The security officer stepped in and spoke for the first time. "We are pulling the entry log," he said. He walked to a side desk and opened a binder with thick plastic pages. He flipped to tonight's date and ran his finger down a column of times. I watched his fingertips stop. He turned the binder so the doctor could see it. The doctor leaned in, eyes narrowing, and then he looked at me. The patient advocate's pen finally touched the paper. I heard the scratch of ink like a clock ticking. The doctor said very quietly, "Your husband did not check in alone." The security officer kept the binder open with his palm. The plastic page curled under his thumb. He pointed again at the same line, like my eyes were refusing to accept it. 2 names signed in at 11:58. The doctor pulled the binder closer. The charge nurse angled her body so my husband could not see the page. The waiting room felt colder, even with people breathing in it. "Who was with you?" the doctor asked him. My husband's smile stayed in place. His eyes did not. "I drove her," he said. "That's all." The security officer tapped the line with his finger. "You did not," he said, steady. "You arrived after the badge scan." My husband's face tightened. He glanced toward the hallway doors like there was an exit he could use without looking guilty. The patient advocate leaned in toward me. She spoke low, like she did not want the waiting room to borrow my story. "Did anyone come earlier with your identification?" she asked. I stared at her. My stomach rolled. I shook my head. No. The pain under my ribs pulsed again. I gripped the edge of the chair until my knuckles went pale. A man across the room clicked a pen, over and over, like a metronome. The doctor nodded once, then turned to the charge nurse. "Move her back into a room," he said. "Now." The charge nurse touched my elbow, firm but gentle. She guided me through the corridor while I carried my bag against my chest like it could protect me. We passed a wall sign that said "Quiet Zone," and I wanted to laugh at it. Inside a smaller room, the doctor shut the door and checked the lock again. The sound hit my spine. He set my chart on the counter and slid it toward the patient advocate. She opened her folder and took out a stamped envelope, the kind that looked official without being loud. She smoothed the flap once, slow, like she was calming herself. I did the same thing without meaning to. I smoothed the corner of my blanket. Then I smoothed it again. The patient advocate said, "This is going to feel personal." I whispered, "It already does." She opened the stamped envelope with a letter opener and pulled out one sheet. At the top was a printed line and a receipt number. She turned it so I could read it. The number was clear. Ethics receipt 004918. Under it, one sentence had been boxed in pen. Patient requests private interview. Spouse insists on answering for her. My throat went tight. I blinked hard, once, then again. "I never filed this," I said. The doctor's eyes stayed on the paper. "You did not," he said. "Someone else triggered the report." The charge nurse leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "This is not a first-time issue," she said. I stared at the boxed sentence until it blurred. My hands moved on their own. I reached out and smoothed the page, flattening it like I could flatten the meaning too. That was the moment it flipped. The last time I smoothed paperwork, I was trying to be easy. I was trying to be the kind of wife nobody called dramatic. Now I was smoothing evidence. I heard my husband's voice in my head, casual and practiced. Anxiety. Overreacting. Spiral. The patient advocate asked, "Did you visit any clinic in the last 6 months?" 6 months ago meant early fall. It meant the weekend my husband insisted we get our paperwork organized. He bought a new file box and labeled folders with a thick marker. He said it was for the future. He said it was responsible. I swallowed. "He took me to an appointment," I said. "He said it was routine." The doctor looked up at me. "Did you ever sign anything about decision-making?" he asked. My mind flashed to a pen in my hand, my husband standing too close behind me, the smell of his cologne mixing with hand sanitizer. I remembered the way he guided the page with his fingertip, like a teacher. I had not read what I signed. I had been tired. I had trusted the tone of his voice. The charge nurse exhaled through her nose. "That's the trap," she said. The doctor picked up the ethics sheet and tapped the boxed sentence again. "Someone used the same language tonight," he said. Outside the door, I heard raised voices. Shoes. The squeak of a rolling cart. The security officer's voice came through, muffled but firm. "Sir, step back from the desk." My stomach dropped. The patient advocate looked at me. "There's more," she said, and slid the page down to reveal the bottom. Another line was printed there, small but sharp. It said, "Capacity assessment requested by spouse." The boxed sentence sat between us like a blade. The doctor slid the ethics sheet back into the stamped envelope. The patient advocate pressed the flap down, then smoothed it twice. "Capacity assessment requested by spouse." I tasted metal in my mouth. My fingers went numb. I kept rubbing my thumb over my wedding band, like it could ground me. The doctor pulled up a stool and sat. He did not touch me. He kept his voice level, almost boring, like that was the only safe way. "Your pain is real," he said. "We will treat it." The charge nurse brought in a blood pressure cuff. The fabric hugged my arm too tight. She watched the numbers rise and fall, then wrote them down without comment. The patient advocate set a cup of water near my hand. I took a sip. The water was lukewarm and tasted like plastic. "Here's what this means," she said, and stopped herself. She shook her head once. Then she switched to action. She opened my chart sleeve and pulled out the folder tab evidence. The label was still there. Dark ink. 11:58 p.m. She held it up next to my identification like she was building a small wall. Then she reached into her bag and took out a printed page. It was folded into thirds. The paper had that stiff office feel. She did not hand it to me yet. She placed it on the counter, face down, and smoothed it once. My eyes flicked to the corner. I could see a date stamp through the paper. The doctor said, "You can refuse a capacity assessment." I looked at him. "Even if my husband asked?" "Yes," he said. "Especially if he asked." The charge nurse crossed her arms. "He likes the word spouse," she said. "It sounds like a key." Outside the room, the noise swelled. A chair scraped. A voice rose, sharp and angry, then cut off. The security officer knocked once and stepped inside. He did not come all the way in. He kept his body in the doorway, like a barrier. "He's at the front desk," he said. "He wants her discharged." My stomach lurched. "He can do that?" The patient advocate shook her head. "Not unless you ask," she said. "Not unless you sign." The doctor stood and walked to the door. He spoke quietly to the security officer, then shut the door again. The lock clicked. The sound made me feel both safe and trapped. I whispered, "He's going to tell people I'm crazy." The patient advocate's pen moved once across her notepad. "Scratch. Stop. Scratch. Let him talk," she said. "We document what matters." It was almost 2 a.m. My shift at the dental office started at 8. I pictured the morning routine I would miss. Coffee in the break room. The front desk bell. The assistant who always brought banana bread. I had never missed a day without guilt. Now I was counting minutes like they were proof. The doctor returned with a small tray. A pill cup. A paper packet. He slid it toward me. Slow. "Take this," he said. "It will help the pain." I picked up the cup with my fingertips. The plastic felt too light. I swallowed, then set it down and watched my hand tremble after. The patient advocate lifted the folded page. She turned it over so I could see the top line. It was an email printout. The sender line was half visible, but the subject was clear. Subject: correction, request, consent, and emergency contact. I stared at the words until they steadied. She pointed with the tip of her pen. "This is going to the medical records director," she said, "and the hospital compliance office." I flinched at the word compliance, like it meant trouble for me too. "It's not trouble for you," she said, reading my face. "It's a protection." The charge nurse leaned in and added, "It also creates a trail he cannot erase." The doctor glanced at my chart again. "We will note that you requested privacy," he said. "We will note who tried to override you." I swallowed hard. What if he already did it somewhere else? The patient advocate did not answer with reassurance. She answered with a question. "Do you have a file box at home?" she asked. My mind flashed to the plastic file box. The thick marker labels. My husband's neat handwriting. A folder he called Health. "Yes," I said, and my voice cracked. The charge nurse's eyes narrowed. "That's where it lives," she said. The patient advocate folded the email printout and slid it into the stamped envelope with the ethics sheet. Then she sealed it. The adhesive made a soft, tearing sound. She held the envelope out to me. "This is yours," she said. "Not his." I took it with both hands. The paper was warm from her fingers. I smoothed the front like I always did with paperwork. Habit before fear. Outside, I heard my husband again, louder now. His words were muffled, but the tone was familiar, confident, certain, like he was talking to someone who mattered. The security officer's radio crackled once. A second voice answered. Short, controlled. The doctor checked the hallway clock through the window. 20:70 am. He turned back to me. "In a minute," he said, "someone will ask you one question." My throat tightened. "What question?" He did not blink. "Who do you trust to speak for you?" The door handle rattled once, hard, like a test. Then a different knock came. Slower. 3 taps. Professional. The patient advocate looked at the door, then at the envelope in my hands. She whispered, "That email was sent by someone named Marisol Grant." The hospital administration front desk looked nothing like the waiting room. No cartoons on the television. No vending machine hum. Just a long counter, a glass window, and a line of people holding paperwork like shields. The security officer walked beside my wheelchair, slow and steady. The stamped envelope sat on my lap under my hands. I kept smoothing the flap like I was afraid it would open by itself. Marisol Grant sent the correction request. The patient advocate stayed on my left. The charge nurse stayed on my right. The doctor followed a step behind, calm as a closed door. My husband was already there, leaning into the glass window like he was negotiating a refund. His voice carried. He used the same tone he used at restaurants when a server forgot his extra sauce. "I am her husband," he said. "She's emotional. She doesn't understand forms." A woman behind the glass lifted her eyes. She wore a badge and a headset cord clipped to her collar. She did not look impressed. She looked tired. My husband saw me and widened his arms like this was a reunion. "There she is," he said loud and forced a laugh. "Tell them you're fine." The heat rushed up my neck again. I felt the denim jacket woman from earlier somewhere behind me. I heard the whisper of shoes, the small chorus of waiting people watching, pretending not to. The patient advocate leaned in. "Remember the question," she whispered. "Who do you trust to speak for you?" I gripped the envelope so hard the paper bowed. My husband stepped closer, stopping just short of the wheelchair. "Let's go home," he said, softer now. "You've made your point." The charge nurse's eyes didn't leave his face. The security officer shifted his stance. His hand hovered near his radio, ready but not dramatic. I looked up at my husband. My voice came out steadier than my hands. "No," I said. He blinked, like he had not heard me correctly. The woman behind the glass tapped a key and slid a thin tray open beneath the window. "If you're the patient," she said, "I need you to confirm your full name and date of birth." I did. My mouth was dry, but I did it. My husband exhaled sharply and leaned toward the tray. "She's confused," he said. "I can sign." The patient advocate lifted her pen and said, calm and clear, "Repeat that." Slowly. My husband's face tightened. He looked at the small crowd like he wanted them to agree with him, like he wanted a laugh. "This is ridiculous," he said. "She panics. She exaggerates. The doctor stepped forward just enough to be seen. "Stop," he said, not loud, just final. The woman behind the glass turned her headset cord between two fingers. "Sir," she said, "I'm not taking instructions from you." My husband's jaw worked. "You have to," he said. "I'm listed." The patient advocate slid the stamped envelope onto the counter, right in front of the tray. She placed it down like evidence, not like mail. Then she opened it. She pulled out the printed email and held it up so the woman behind the glass could see the subject line. Subject: Correction request consent and emergency contact. The woman behind the glass leaned forward. Her eyes moved left to right, fast. She pressed a button, and the tray slid out farther. "Put it in the tray," she said. The patient advocate did. The paper made a soft whisper as it landed. My husband snapped. "You can't do that. That's private." The charge nurse didn't look at him. She looked at the woman behind the glass. "It's her record," she said. "She's right here." The woman behind the glass took the printout, then reached below her counter and pulled up a second page. She placed it against the glass, angled so we could see it. At the top was a name in bold: Marisol Grant, Medical Records Director. My stomach dropped and lifted at the same time. The patient advocate pointed to the sender line. "That is who sent it," she said. "And it was sent tonight." My husband's eyes flicked to the name. Then he tried to laugh again, like laughter could smear ink. "That doesn't mean anything," he said. "I told you. She overreacts. She gets dramatic." The woman behind the glass didn't laugh. She turned the page and tapped a line with her nail. "There's a note attached to the correction request," she said. "It's time-stamped." My husband leaned closer, trying to read it through the glass. His breath fogged a small circle. I watched his shoulders tense. The woman behind the glass read it out loud, evenly, like she was reading a policy. "Patient requests private interview. Spouse insists on answering for her." My throat tightened so hard it hurt. The denim jacket woman behind me made a small sound, like a sucked-in breath. Someone shifted in line. The air changed. My husband snapped his head toward me. "That's not what happened," he said. "Tell her that's not what happened." The patient advocate didn't answer him. She asked me, "Do you want him listed as your emergency contact?" I looked at my husband. He was still smiling, but it was thinner now, stretched over something sharp. I said, No, not anymore." The charge nurse leaned in and said to the woman behind the glass, "Remove him." The woman behind the glass nodded once and started typing. Her fingers were quick, practiced. The keys sounded like rain on a window. My husband's face went white in patches. "You can't," he said, voice rising. "You can't just." The security officer stepped forward, not aggressive, just present. "Sir," he said, "you need to lower your voice." My husband pointed at me like I was a problem report. "She's doing this to punish me," he said. "She always does this." The doctor looked at him for the first time like he was not a husband, not a partner, not anything special. He said, "This is not a marriage argument. This is consent." My husband's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to the people watching, to the badge, to the glass. The woman behind the glass slid the tray out again. "Ma'am," she said, "I need your signature to finalize the correction." The pen was attached to a cord. The plastic barrel was warm, like someone else had just used it. My hand shook as I took it. I signed slowly, deliberately. The moment my pen lifted, the woman behind the glass pulled the paper back in and said, "It's done." My husband stared at the tray like it had betrayed him. He leaned toward me, too close, and hissed, "You're going to regret this." The security officer's radio clicked once, quiet. The officer touched it with 2 fingers, then looked at my husband. "Step back," he said. My husband stepped back, and his smile finally cracked. The patient advocate gathered the papers into the stamped envelope again. She sealed it with her thumb, firm and careful, and handed it to me. Then the woman behind the glass added almost casually, "One more thing." She lifted a fresh page and held it up to the glass. There was a single line near the bottom, printed in plain text. "Authorized visitor. Removed. Effective immediately." My husband swallowed hard, and then he said a name I had never heard before. "Fine," he muttered. "Call my mother. Call Dr. Heller. He'll explain." The security officer guided my wheelchair back through a quieter corridor. The night staff moved like they were trying not to wake the building. My stamped envelope sat on my lap again, warm where my palms kept smoothing it. His access ended with one printed line. The doctor walked beside us until we reached my room. He held my chart in one hand and a folded sheet in the other. He did not look like someone who enjoyed conflict. He looked like someone who had seen it too many times. "We documented the consent interference," he said. "It's in the record now." The words should have felt like victory. They did not. They felt like a door closing somewhere deep in my chest. The charge nurse adjusted my blanket and checked my monitor without asking how I was doing. Her kindness was all in the way she tucked the edge, so it would not scratch my skin. The patient advocate stayed long enough to make me repeat my sister's name and number. She read it back to me, then wrote it again in a clean block of letters. When she finished, she capped her pen with a click that sounded final. "Your husband will be told the same thing every time," she said. "No access. No decisions. No speaking for you." I swallowed and nodded. My fingers found my wedding band again, then stopped. I slid it off slowly, like it might snap if I hurried. I set it on the tray table next to the stamped envelope. I watched it sit there, dull under fluorescent light. The doctor waited until the room settled. Then he added, "There is also a correction notice." He held up the folded sheet. The paper had the hospital logo at the top and a timestamp at the bottom. I could not read every line, but I saw one phrase repeated twice. "Patient. Confirmed." The patient advocate said, "This is what people see when they pull the record." Not his version. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. Outside the room, I heard my husband's voice once, faint and distant, like a radio in another apartment. Then a door shut and the sound cut off. The nurse station kept humming. A cartwheel squeaked. Life kept doing what it does when yours splits open. The pain eased enough that I could think again. My thoughts were not kind. They were sharp, like broken plastic. I reached for my bag and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with missed calls and one voicemail notification. I did not press play. Instead, I opened the call log and stared at the last time he called me earlier that night. It was after he left. After he told the room I was exaggerating. My thumb hovered. I could almost hear his voice without listening. Calm. Certain. Like I was a problem he managed. I deleted the voicemail without playing it. For a second, my hand shook. And then it did not. The doctor nodded once, like he noticed. He did not praise me. He just respected the action. The patient advocate gathered the papers from the counter and slid them into my stamped envelope. She did it slowly, with the corners aligned. Then she handed it back. I smoothed the front of it one last time, then tucked it into the pocket of my tote bag. I did not hand it to anyone. I did not ask permission to keep it. My sister arrived around dawn, with her hair still damp from a rushed shower. She carried a paper cup of coffee and a plastic bag with a clean sweatshirt inside. When she saw my face, her mouth tightened. "What happened?" she asked. I did not give her a speech. I picked up the envelope from my bag and set it on the blanket. I tapped it once with my finger. "They corrected the record," I said. "And they removed him." My sister's eyes flicked to the wedding band on the tray table. She did not touch it. She just sat down and took my hand, careful not to pull on the monitor wires. Behind her, the doctor came in for one last check. He asked me to squeeze his fingers. He watched my eyes. He asked me the day and the month and the city. When I answered, he did not look relieved. He looked satisfied, like the facts were finally allowed to matter. He set my discharge papers on the tray table with a soft slap. A pen came with them, clipped to the top. I stared at the signature line. For months, I had been signing things because my husband told me they were routine. For months, I had been smoothing paperwork like it was my job to make it easier for him. Today, my hand did not apologize. I signed my name slowly, deliberately, every letter clean. I signed my own name. No one guided my hand. The charge nurse came in with a small stack of instructions and a pill schedule printed in plain language. She pointed to the times and asked me to repeat them back. When I did, she nodded and said, "Good. Not sweet. Not warm. Just good." The patient advocate returned once more at the doorway. She did not step inside. She held up a single sheet, like a receipt. "This is the correction confirmation," she said. If anyone tries to argue later, you have it. She set it in my stamped envelope, sealed it, and pressed her thumb over the flap. Then she looked at me and said, "Your record will reflect what happened." That was the public part. Not a speech. Not a post. Just an institutional truth that could not be bullied. When my sister wheeled me toward the exit, we passed the same intake desk where my husband had stood like I was a nuisance. The clerk glanced up and recognized me. Her eyes softened for half a second. No one clapped. No one made a scene. But a security officer at the front nodded at me. Once, like a quiet witness. Outside, the air was cold and clean. The parking lot had one streetlight still on. My sister opened the car door and held it too long, waiting until I was steady. Before I sat, I reached back and touched the hospital bed rail through the open door, just once. Smooth metal. Real. Then I let go.